Hi everyone, welcome back. In this session, I am going to start the experiment number 5 of your operating system lab. In this experiment, I'll try to make you familiar with some of the system calls. The syntax of those system calls we will discuss. We will also write sample programs so you will be comfortable enough to write different programs which is given in your manual. Okay. So in this particular session, the learning objective is we try to learn how to create a child process. So when we write a program, if I want to create another child of that running or executing program, we need to use fork system call. So first we will discuss fork system call. And if we have created, let's say, one or two or three processes, if we want to print the detail about the process, like the process ID or parent process ID, then we use two another system calls getpid and getppid. So let's discuss the very important system call, that is fork. So what is fork system call? Fork system call generally available, or you can say supported by Unix based operating systems. So like Linux or Unix based operating system, they support fork system call, and it creates an exact copy of the running process. So a new process will be created which will be an exact copy of the parent process. Okay, and this copy will include some of the things, like it will be copying the program code of the parent, it will copy the data as well as the stack. So I hope you must be familiar with all these things. Every process has these three things: the program code which we write, so process execute line by line that given code, and when processor execute an instruction requires some data to execute the instruction, so that data block will also be copied. And stack is also when we generate a function call inside the primary memory, stack start growing, so every process contains a stack also. So all these three things will be copied to the child. The only difference, your child will be having different process ID, so the process ID will be different from the parent. Rest these three things will be copied to the child. When a program call forks, the operating system creates a new process by duplicating the calling process, right? This new process is called a child process. So newly created process termed as child process, and it will execute the same code. By default, it will get the same code block, so it will start executing the same code similar to parent process, right? The child process will have separate address space. So your parent process, although both the processes are having same code, but child process will be loaded somewhere else in the memory. Parent process will occupy some other space in the memory, so that in case anything in that memory space is being updated by child process, your parent process should not be getting affected. Okay, so that is the thing. The fork system call returns different values. That is very important. The return value of fork is very important. So it returns a different value. It returns the parent process ID, or you can say it returns the process ID of the child to parent. Okay, so fork returns the PID of the child process to the parent process, and fork returns 0 to child process. So these two return values helps the system to understand the fork is being executed by which particular process, whether the parent is executing fork or child. Based on the return value, the system can distinguish. So let's look at the manual and try to understand fork, and then we write a code also. So let's look at the manual. In the manual, if you type man, let me increase the font. So if you type man fork, you will see in order to use fork system call, we need to include these two header files, sys/types.h and unistd.h. Okay. And in case we call fork system call, we need not to pass any argument. So inside this fork, void is written. That means no argument is required to be passed. And in case fork system call executes successfully, it returns a variable of type PID_T. So the return value of fork, if we want to store or print, this PID_T type variable can be printed as an integer. Okay. So the return value of the fork, I have already told you, it returns two things. For the parent process, fork will return the ID of the child. For child process, the fork will return 0. In case fork doesn't work properly, it returns -1 in case of failure. So you can check the manual, it will reflect the return value. So it is saying for failure or on failure, it returns -1. Okay, on success, it returns the PID of child to parent and 0 for the child process. Okay. Now there is another system call, you can say getPID. So getPID, as the name suggests, we use this system call to get the running process ID. Okay. And this does not take any argument. It is void. So no need to pass anything inside the getPID. And it will return the running process ID or the process ID of the process which called that particular getPID system call. Okay. And to execute this, again, we need the same these header files, sys/types and unistd.h. There's another system called getppid. Getppid returns the parent process ID, and it also does not require any argument to be passed, right? So I hope fork, getpid and getppid you are comfortable to use. Let's write a code. So I have already written a sample code. So let's open, let's say fork.c, and this is a sample code. So I have included stdio.h because I am going to print something. I am going to use printf statement. I have included unistd.h because I am going to use fork and getpid, getppid, and I have also included sys/types.h. Here I am taking some of the variables. So PID_T type variable I am taking because getPID, getppid or fork, they return this kind of variable only. So PID_T type, let's say PID I have taken. Okay. And this PID, actually I'm calling here getPID here. So when this function will execute successfully, it will return the process ID, and this line will be executed by this process. So this program will become a process, and the very first line it will call this getPID. So when this program will execute, first we try to print the process ID of that. Okay. And then we are printing this current process ID is this PID. So I told you this PID_T you can print as integer. So I'm taking here %d sign. Okay. Now you are forking here. So in this line, the message I am displaying, now you are going to fork new child, and we have created a new variable child_PID, which is of type PID_T, and the return value of fork system call we are storing here. Now after you call the fork, better to check the error whether fork has been executed successfully or not. So I'm checking this child PID is equal to -1. If it is -1, that means fork does not execute successfully, there was a problem. So we return a failure kind of statement, fail the fork, a child process, and we return something like 1. Okay. Else, if that was not the case, then there are two cases can be. Your child PID may be 0 if that fork was called by the child process. So if it is 0, then we print child process ID and parent process ID. So child process ID and parent process ID we are printing with the help of getPID and getppid. Okay. Else part means neither your fork has written -1 nor your fork has written 0. That means your fork will return the child process ID. So in else part we are printing this is the parent process and the parent process PID. So we are getting get PID here and we are closing this. I hope this code is clear. I'll give this code as a PDF file or doc file in the description. So I'll give you the link. Don't worry. Let's execute it. So if you want to execute, you run gcc fork.c. Now there's no error. So you can execute by typing ./a.out. You are already aware about. Now this program will become a process. And let's see. The process ID of your program is 3483. So this program which I have written, it is converted into a process and that is having process ID as 3483. And then once we fork a child process, then the child process is having process ID 3484, although the earlier created process which was my original program that is having process ID 3483. So I hope it is clear. 3483 process called a fork, and because of that fork another child has been created. A newly created child is having child ID or process ID is 3484, and the parent of this newly created child is the parent process ID of this. It is giving like 2299. Why it is giving like this? Because you might be considering that this ID must be there as a parent of this child, but it is not there. Why? Because this line has been printed later on. That means when I have executed this program, the parent process finished early and child is finishing after that. Okay, if we want to control it, there is a wait system call, so I'll tell you later. But let me execute again. So you may get different answer. Now this time you are getting the, see, parent process ID is 3494 and whatever the program I have executed, that ID is 3494 also. Okay. The important thing here, you need to remember that once you call fork, fork will create a parent process, and fork has been called by your original process, that is the parent process, and one child process will be created, right? And parent and child both are independent to each other. They can execute in any of the order. So they, if you are having parallel processing architecture, they can execute parallelly. If you are having single CPU kind of architecture, they can execute concurrently. Okay, so that's why maybe the output of child will be printed early or parent can be printed early, or you can say parent can be terminated before child or child can be terminated before parent. So in case, as in this case, if I discuss, if in case parent has been terminated, the parent of parent possibly has been replaced here, or the mother process, or you can say getty process, will become the parent of the process. So these concepts we will discuss later on. Just come back to the code which I have displayed, and then I am wrapping up this particular session. So I'm clearing the screen and I'm opening that code so you can see it, right? So this code will help you to understand how to use fork system call, how to create a child process using fork system call. Okay. Now in a program, if you are not able to understand this much of complex code, let's say, because you are doing it first time, let's write it again. I write, let's say, fork 1.c. In this you can include okay. Now let's say I write into main. Now let's make a very easy and simple code. Here I'm writing, let's say, return statement. Okay. So as a very layman user, if you write, I'm printing here printf, I'm printing the parent process ID. Okay, the parent or the process ID of the parent. Okay, the parent process ID is, we can display as an integer this value. So a new line, let's say I'm displaying here. Here I'm using getpid function. Getpid will return PID underscore type that I am printing as an integer. Okay. So if I just execute, I'm just writing the process ID is. Okay. I'm not saying parent or anything. If I save it, when I execute, this program will become a process, and whatever ID system allocate to that process, it will be printed. Okay. So let me execute. So if I compile this fork1.c and if I run it, the process ID is 3524. If I execute this program again, the different process ID system allocate to it. If I run it again, the different process ID, every time system will allocate different process ID for newly generated process. Okay. Now if I do some of the modifications in that, now let's say I want to print the parent process ID of this program. So this program is being called by bash. So for this particular process which I am initiating, the parent will be bash for this. Okay. So if you want to print, you can print two things by calling PID and PPID. Okay. But in case if I use another function, let's say if I use fork here. So if you use fork here, okay. And after that, let's say if I apply a print f statement and I'm printing, let's say hello /n. Okay. Now if we do not apply this fork, this printf will be printed only once. But because fork is there, fork will create a similar duplicate process. Then these printf statement will be executed twice. Okay. So let's try to execute it. Now compile it. Now let's see. The process ID is 3561. That is fine because it was before fork. But after fork, whatever has been returned, it will be executed twice. So hello is being printed twice. One times hello is being printed by parent process, and another time the hello is being printed by child process. So look at the code. I am not applying the error related like return value of fork and other things we need to apply, but you can understand, I hope, that thing. Okay. So if you apply which hello is being printed by which, you need to take a variable. So let me take a variable. Let's say if I'm taking PID underscore T type variable and I'm storing PID. So this PID, I'm storing fork here. And on this return value of PID, I apply the logic. Okay. So I'm applying if this PID is equal to 0. Okay. Then this hello will be printed by child. Okay. So child is printing. Let's say I'm writing here. Child is printing hello. Okay. But if I apply if, or if I write else I'm considering there is no error. So your fork is not returning -1. It will return some positive value. So that's why I'm applying else here. Else I'm writing printf. The parent process is printing hello. Okay, so hello is being printed twice in the program. Once parent is printing, another time child is printing. Okay, so if you compile it and execute it, see, it will help you which hello is being printed by which particular process, whether it is parent or child. So after this, you must be clear about the use of Fox system call, getpid and getppid. So this is the very first session on experiment number 5. In next session, we will be doing some more things. Okay. Thank you everyone for connecting.